Welcome to the Versa Business Tips Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Versa Business Systems, Shaheen Mazloom. We're here with two guests today, Robert and Kaylee. They are the masters when it comes to couples running a business together, having a successful marriage. Their business, Power Couples by Design. I'm excited about this conversation. I just got married. I appreciate you guys hopping on the podcast today. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing good. And
Congratulations.
now that we know you just got married, I understand this is like a self-serving episode, right?
Yes, absolutely.
but that always makes for the best episode. Those always make for the best episodes, though. That's right.
Well, the fact is, all of the episodes have been self-serving, man.
Yeah.
Like every single person I've interviewed, I want to know some information from. Like that's how we grow. We learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
And every conversation I've had has helped me in my business just as much as it's helped other people.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I keep doing this.
Yep, it's good reason to do it.
Absolutely. So, Robert, Kaylee, for those out there that don't know who you are and what your business does, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
So I come from a Fortune 500 background, marketing and sales. When I went to school, like my dad, he was a pastor, and all he did was tell me, stay out of debt, go to school, get a good job. So
Yeah.
I did the last two pretty well. Gotten a lot of debt that obviously paid off, but so got into marketing in college and got my degree in marketing, and then I worked with Coca-Cola. Landed my first job out of college was with Coca-Cola. Right when Powerade was launching and the World Cup was in the U.S., so that kind of dates me right to the early '90s. And so right off the bat, huge experience. Great feather in my cap as far as my resume goes. And then from there, I transitioned to the pharmaceutical industry where I spent really the bulk of my career, all in some kind of marketing and sales capacity. And then 8 years ago, felt just led to say, okay, I think this is enough, and now it's time to go and do my own thing. And
Right.
Kaylee, coming from an entrepreneurial background, she gave me her blessing on that because that's kind of what she knew. And
Right.
she even told me when we were dating that she could see me having a business.
And he
Awesome.
thought I was crazy. But in my world, like Robert was saying, I'm third generation entrepreneur. So most people that I knew had their own business. So I totally could see him having a business.
Right. That's awesome. So you kind of gave him the push he needed to get into the, to start doing it for himself instead of making, Coca-Cola and all these other guys richer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. She planted the seed. She didn't push very hard. She just kind of planted the seed. And so really what it did was it gave me permission to explore because I didn't think, growing up, that's not what was on my radar.
Right. That's most people, right?
Yeah. And so then, I didn't know what kind of business it would be. So I printed up the NSABC codes or the ISBN codes or whatever, the codes for all the industries. And I just checked each one by one. Nope. And so I'm thinking, okay, that didn't get me anywhere. So I thought, well, my experience is in marketing. I work for some, big companies, got a lot of great experience. So I think I know a little bit about it. So I basically started first helping out some friends in their business and then enjoyed that. So then started charging and started getting more clients. And then I thought, hey, I really like this because one is the big difference between working or consulting with a family business versus a publicly traded company is you really get to know the owners and the people on a deeper level than in a corporation where one achievement is good for the quarter, but then we got the next quarter to satisfy the shareholders.
Oh, yeah.
Versus you see the lift that it creates on the business owners and their team when we're moving the business from here to there, right? And just that relationship part, I really enjoyed. And so that's why I decided let's start doing this. And then as I got into it, what I found was the average business owner, small business, and when I talk about small business, our clientele is around $30 million and under,
right?
That they were working much harder than they need to. They didn't have so much of a marketing issue as it was more of a productivity issue.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing was part of it, but that wasn't the first place I said we need to start because if the average small business is working really hard, right? You hear this a lot.
Yeah.
And imagine 20% growth on that, on already working hard. That can potentially kill you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And so, you're already working at your max capacity. You go an extra 20%, then you're not sleeping.
So the first thing we look at was how do we get better margin?
Right.
How do we not working on sales volume, but working on better margins? Because that will allow you to sell less and make more. which and plus with the better margin allows you to hire the help you need to handle the capacity for growth.
Right.
And so those are some elementary things I knew from the Fortune 500 side, which is a blessing. And then as we're looking at these issues in the business, we also saw that it was affecting home life. So statistically, according to, I forgot what the name of, anyways.
It's not Gottman's, is it?
No, there's one statistic that the 71% of entrepreneurs are married. So the majority of business owners are married, and that's been our experience. And so what was happening was we're noticing dynamic of how hard they're working in the business was stealing time away from home, and it was affecting the relationship, which then starts to impact their business too.
Yeah.
Because when you're grumpy leaving the driveway,
you're
going to take it out on your team. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's when I tapped my wife 6 years ago and I said, "Hey, honey, I think there's an issue here that I know you felt it growing up, and I'm seeing it still playing out, not just in your life, in your background, but also all these other business owners. So why don't we deal with this thing head on?
Right.
Why don't we address both sides?"
Because growing up in my family, the business became the mistress. My dad worked 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And I don't think to this day he made it to my high school graduation, because the mindset is the go-to if we need to make more money, we put more time in.
Yeah.
And so we didn't measure anything. We didn't keep track of what was working, if we were being productive. It was just the money and time.
Yeah. 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 Trading time for money, just like working any other job. And, I had a conversation with an entrepreneur about that the other day. And I'm like, you're literally just working. You might as well go get a job. You're working and you're trading your time for money. That's not what being an entrepreneur is about. Like, you got to eventually remove yourself from the business and still be able to make money.
Yeah.
Right?
And when you track it on an hourly basis, you're probably making less.
Yeah.
With your own
business.
business.
You'd be better off working at Chick-fil-A.
Exactly.
What?
And you get health benefits.
An hour now, right? Yeah, and you get benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
And free ice cream.
There you go, the ice cream. That sold me.
Right. So you noticed there was a problem in the marketplace in general in businesses with family and business. So how did you figure out how did you guys make it work?
Well, it started before we even got married. It started barely before we even started dating. So after 4 dates, Kaylee says to me, "I think you should go to counseling."
And he was so excited about that.
And
just what he wanted to hear.
I'm thinking, okay, we've had 4 dates.
Right.
Like, we met online. Both of our dating profiles are still live, right? Just in case.
Yeah.
So I'm like, are we even dating? Like,
right.
And so, when she explained to me her rationale, then it made sense. And that's when I decided to go.
Yeah. Robert was previously married to his high school sweetheart.
Okay.
And a week before Christmas, she was driving to work and got killed in an automobile accident.
Jesus.
And I knew he would always
now
love
I need
her.
Counseling.
I know. Isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
And I knew he'd always love her. And I just wanted to make sure he'd have room in his heart for me.
Yeah.
And that I didn't want to find out 2 years later that he didn't. And I had put everything into this relationship. And so that was one of the reasons why I suggested counseling.
Yeah. So that was the initial reason. And then, the counselor ended up seeing her counselor, and Kaylee lived an hour away from me. And so I would just time it so I can be in, I was still in my pharmaceutical job.
Right.
So my sales territory happened to overlap into where she lived. So I would just time it so I would be there in the end of the day and then go to counseling and then pick her up for dinner.
Right.
So inevitably she would ask me, "So how'd it go?" And I just said, "Fine," basically, because I just went through an hour of this.
Right.
I didn't want to relive it.
Yeah.
And inquiring minds want to know.
And so I finally, after I think the second session, I said, "Why don't you just come with me?"
Right.
And then you can have your questions answered real time.
Yeah.
And then she said no, but then she said, okay. So basically from there, it turned into relationship counseling, where we dealt with really how to communicate better and how to resolve issues.
Wow.
In real
and that
time.
was almost immediately in your relationship.
Pretty much, you could say.
That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, before we even were, going steady.
Yeah.
But so it was 2 years till the time we got married. We did that. So I felt like we got an MBA in counseling and therapy.
Yeah.
And we dealt with all the all the big issues that
Up
married
front,
couples
right
deal with
out.
after,
Yeah.
before we even got married.
That
Finance,
makes
in-laws,
so much
holidays.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, you end up dating someone for 3, 4, 5 years sometimes, right? And then after 3 or 4 years, you realize, oh, there was this stuff that I didn't know, and now it's this problem, right? Or something, right? Something years down the road. But if you start, after your 4th date, you start doing counseling together. I mean, you're good to go, and you know everything in a few months.
Yeah. At least the big issues, right, honey?
Yeah, because I didn't want to, and he was the only one that I ever did that with.
It's efficient. I commend you. I think it's very efficient.
But I didn't mind getting married and finding out a small thing, but I didn't want to get married and find out this huge glaring thing I didn't know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now what?
Yeah,
on the honeymoon,
Yeah, totally. So what have you guys figured out is the main issue, other than obviously business owners working too much in their business and they're working it like a job, trading time for money? How do you start to fix that so they get more time in their relationship? Or is time not the issue?
Time's always an issue, but I think it's more about how you intentionally use the time.
Yeah.
And what happens is we just respond to things and fill it on our calendars.
Yeah.
Every opportunity we say, yeah, especially as entrepreneurs, we have FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Every opportunity, we don't want to miss out on the next big thing.
Yeah.
So then we say yes to everything. And then our plate gets full, our calendar gets full, and we have no time for our marriage, our family, and we're trying to fit family time in. And so we get asked this question a lot: how do you fit family time in? I said, you don't fit family time in. You start with putting family first on your calendar, and then you fill in everything else.
Yeah, that's what I've done. I've always done that. Like after 8 o'clock during the week, I'm not booking anything. Like my last podcast will be at 7:15 or 7:30. You guys probably saw it in the calendar when you booked, right? Like it is not going past that time. And Saturdays and Sundays is my time. Every now and then, if business needs to be thrown in, it will. But for the most part, like I gotta have 10% of my time with my wife, with my family. I'd go insane otherwise.
Yeah, and the reality too, the research shows that when you're more properly rested and refreshed, you have more energy to get more done in a shorter period of time.
And be more creative.
Yeah, so that's where the productivity comes
more
in.
More productive, yeah.
Right, exactly. So the typical business owner is putting more time in, stressing them out further, and then their energy level gets depleted, their concentration, their innovation, all that gets worse. Yep. So which means you end up losing productivity the longer you work during the week, as opposed to refreshing yourself, and not just about sleeping and taking a nap, but just like you, just spending time with family, getting your mind off work. Right. That's refreshing. And then you get re-energized to be more productive and accomplish more in less time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what about like couples that work together? Like, do you suggest they have their own business? Because like right now, my wife has her businesses. I have mine, right? There's really no overlap. I'll get her take on things and she'll get my take on things, and we'll help each other out here and there with things. But what is your take on that? Is it good to pull your energy together and your work, you guys have a work life and you have a home life, or is it really just dependent on the people?
It is dependent on the people, but in some capacity, both spouses should be involved in the business. Now, right. In your case, you've got multiple businesses, so what you would be doing is more about looking at yourself, you and your wife, as a C corporation and as an umbrella company, as a family business unit, and then you have these multiple businesses underneath it. Right. And so individually, you might be running your own thing because, well, you need to, right? You got to divide and conquer. Right. But the overarching piece to that, the family business unit, how do you come together and help each other strategize and be counsel on all these big decisions you got to make, and about even the direction these businesses are taking? It's like, is this fitting for the vision of our life that we have for the future? Right. And as we're building this thing, what do we need to start to offload? Do we sell this thing? Do we make it more of an employee and ESOP thing? How do we structure the exit or succession of these multiple business units to fit the vision that we have long term?
Yeah, you might not be involved in the day-to-day stuff, but a lot of times we marry opposites.
Yeah.
And it's great to run things by each other. Like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And they'll come up with probably something totally you didn't think about. And you're like, oh my gosh, I totally think that'll work.
Yeah. So
no, that
at the
makes
very
sense.
least, every couple should work together in some capacity
Right.
in the business. And depending, like we have some clients, the wife is a stay-at-home mom, and that's fine. She worked in the business before, and then now she says, I want to raise the kids. Fine. But they still have these business meetings once a week just to because the husband just wants to bounce stuff off.
Right.
Right. And because she's smart and she's also got a different perspective, which is helpful in any business, right? You surround yourself with people that have different skill sets and gifts because you see things a little bit differently, give you a little bit different perspective, but give you a better, well-rounded perspective on the business.
Yeah.
And then there's some that work together full-time and some part-time, everything in between, but it does depend on what their vision is for their life.
Right.
And then, but you never what we don't want to see is they don't work together because they're afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
Which is what I had a fear of early on,
right.
to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like most people do. Like when you think, you think about it, right? So just like you were brought up to, entrepreneur is a scary thing, right? Like we're brought up to get a job, graduate school, go to college, get a job, work for the man, retire and live down in Florida, right? Like that's just that's how you're brought up. But it's the same thing as, don't do business with family. Don't do business with your wife, right? Like there's all these preconceived notions that, how life should be. And I feel like most people, it's ingrained in them just because it's been repeated so many times throughout their life by so many people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, like I was telling somebody the other day, there's a reason why there's a top 1%. Right? Like 99%, the sheep, they do the same thing. Everybody's doing the same thing and they're all going the same place, right? Now when it comes to discussing business with your spouse, because like with me, if I start doing that on a regular basis, I have a fear that that's all we'll end up talking about. Right? Because like that's my passion, it's her passion. Like, do you recommend like scheduling like a meeting where we actually like discuss, hey, here's our goals, here's where we're at, like here's what's going on, or kind of just whenever you get chance, or what's the best way to do it?
So we schedule our weekly meetings Monday at 3:30. And we have like a whole family vision plan. And so we know what our dreams, our vision, what success looks like to us. So we talk about that. And we usually start out giving each other an encouraging word, because who doesn't love that?
Right.
And I'm not good at it on a regular basis. So we got to schedule that in.
I like that.
We will talk about our calendars, what's going on. If Robert's going to be traveling a lot for the next 2 weeks, I like to know what the expectations are ahead of time, so then we can get in a date night or maybe a weekend or something when he gets back. So that's all planned. And we talk about our finances. We talk about our goals. Talk about what's coming up in our business.
Yeah.
What are things looking like? What's.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be on the same page, right? Like, you guys are living under the same roof. Your money's tight. This is all new for me, right? And I'm 36. My wife is 48, right? She's never been married before. This is all very new to both of us, right? So it's, we're both used to being so independent, right? Mm-hmm. We've always been independent, made our own money, never had anybody else to worry about, or have our decisions affect anybody else. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I think you bring up a great suggestions, and we're going to start doing that. I'm going to make sure
so having that you've created out a place and a time to have that on an ongoing basis. So you don't have to think like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be talking about it all week. At 8:00 at night, we're talking about business all the time. And then we also talk about, is there any things that we need to resolve that's not emergency? Like, okay, because sometimes in our lives, I'll bring up something to Robert I need to talk about. And of course, usually it's at a bad time.
Yeah.
And that sets him off and it sets me, then it triggers me, as opposed to saying, is it now a good time? And he'll be like, no, if it's not an emergency, can we talk about it at our meeting?
Right.
And I'll be, okay. And then we have a Google Doc sheet So we
like
put
that.
everything down in the sheet, so I don't
Right.
have to like try and remember. Oh my gosh, what did I
What
want to
was
talk
that
with them
thing I
about?
wanted to? Yeah, I love that. Those are
So
great
what it does
suggestions.
is prevents, because if you're just bring stuff up on the fly, as
Yeah.
Kaylee was saying, inevitably you're going to catch somebody at the wrong time.
Oh, 100%. And we're half listening or not listening at all. And yeah, 100%.
Things get lost in the cracks and all that kind
Yep.
of stuff. Then the pointing the fingers. Oh, you forgot this. Well, you didn't tell me that. Yeah, I did. You
Yeah.
weren't paying attention. That kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that prevents a lot of that. And then there's occasionally some things need to be talked about at the moment. But even then, like I was just saying, if it's not a good time for you or your wife to talk about it, say, okay, when is a good time?
Right.
And then schedule the date to do it, because
Yeah.
you may want to talk about it before your weekly meeting. So say, okay, tomorrow or whatever, right? And so as long as there's a time and place to discuss whatever it is that feels emergent, but
Right.
most of the stuff can usually wait for the weekly meeting, and the occasional stuff we talk about during the week,
Yeah.
right? And it even works in business. I remember one of our clients, he was saying, one of his top clients who's like 60% of revenue for him, for an engineering firm.
Wow.
And he's like, man, they're driving me nuts. They're calling me all the time, and for all these little issues. And I said, do you have like a regularly scheduled meeting with them?
Right.
He's like, no. I said,
Well,
why don't
that's
you set a
why.
weekly meeting? Why don't you set
Yeah.
a weekly meeting? Because
Problem
otherwise, when are they
solved.
going to call you, right?
Yeah.
The reason why they're calling you all the time is because they don't know when else to call you.
Right.
So he's like, oh, that's a good idea. So then he scheduled weekly meetings with his clients. And he's like, oh, God, that was so much better, because I wanted to fire him at some point. So it works in business too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I noticed, like, when we got back from our honeymoon, I've been a lot more calendar focused. Before it was just, all right, we'll get it done, we'll get it done, we'll get it done. Now I'm scheduling everything out, because we've got multiple people's schedules to think about and make sure we've got this on the calendar and that. It's but yeah, I mean, those are great suggestions. What other gold do you got for us?
Well, it's a lot, as you're talking about calendars, because some people might be thinking, God, sounds so business-like. But the reality is,
It's efficient.
if it doesn't, if you don't put it on the calendar, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then she's more spontaneous a lot of times. So we actually plan for
And you can
spontaneity.
still be, yeah. You don't fill out 24 hours a day,
Right,
But I
exactly.
mean, there's still got to be room for spontaneity. Otherwise, it would be very.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, even when we went on our book tour, when we launched our book 2 years ago, Tandem, we drove around the country and we spoke at different spots, places where we had relationships with.
Right.
And so, there was the book side, there's the business side of it for the trip, but the other side was we wanted to see the country.
Yeah.
It was just a good excuse to go see the country.
Absolutely.
And so, you have your calendar and the places we need to be and speak and that kind of stuff. But we kind of padded, the cities we're going to be in, especially the places we want to spend some time in, like Philadelphia or, Charlotte or New Orleans.
Grand Tetons.
Right.
Yeah, make sure
beautiful.
we padded time to enjoy the area, and also for potential opportunity that might come up because of the book.
Absolutely.
And so Philadelphia was actually a stop just purely to see Philadelphia. But along the way, one of the business owners from Bozeman connected us to somebody a business owner in Philadelphia. They said, hey, we'll arrange some business owners to come hear about the book.
Wow.
So we said, okay, we got time.
Right.
And so we kind of don't schedule, to your point earlier, we don't try to stuff our calendar.
Yeah, don't
that loses
it.
out on the opportunity for opportunity.
Yeah,
because we met quite a few people that way. Actually, somebody would introduce us to somebody else, and we're literally on the road, and they're like, "Hey, stop here when you're in town."
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. If you fill up your calendar, then you're right. You don't have opportunities for opportunity.
Exactly.
And opportunity is always going to come across, especially as an entrepreneur, but opportunity to, things come up in life as well. Right. And if you have a full calendar, it's not going to go down so well.
Exactly.
Oh, I wanted to give another little tidbit. So we do like quarterly getaways. So Robert and I will go away for like a long weekend, and we'll do like a whole strategy session about our business, because when you're in a different place, or sometimes we'll go to the beach for the day if we just want to do something shorter, half a day.
Right.
It just creates a lot more creativity that way, getting away from your usual spot and trying something new, and just, I don't know, something about getting away.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we got into the year before we got engaged. We were on a once a month, and that was too much. That was way too much. I think before we got married, we'd visited like 14 countries together.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. So you had some real getaways.
Oh yeah. It was a little much. But yeah, we somebody told us recently, they're like, always make sure you have a trip on the calendar, so you always have something to look forward to.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So we started doing that, and our next trip is coming up middle to end of October. But like, if you always have a trip on the calendar together, like you have something that you can look forward to getting away together. And you're right, when you're away, even if it's an hour or two away, you're away. It's different. You're not home. You're not, you're in a different mind space, headspace, everything. So that's great. So you guys do that once a quarter.
Yeah, once a quarter. And then we have, speaking of trips, we have our Hawaii trip come in November and Italy in May for her big birthday. So, yeah, you're right. You got to, put it on the calendar, otherwise it's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
And two, it motivates you a little bit more to get work done and get things done and get things prepared for when you're gone.
Yeah.
And that means you need to be efficient.
Yeah.
With your time, because you got to be able to get all this stuff done. You can't just be like procrastinating and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you want the business to be able to run when you're not there.
Yeah.
And have people and place to help you.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So a lot of our guests will have some sort of a gift for our viewers and our listeners. What do you guys have for them today?
So we basically have a better balance guide. So how do you do marriage and business better? And so just go to our website, marriedentrepreneur.co/Versa, which is basically part of the name of the podcast. So we have a specific landing page just for your audience. And it'll cover a lot of there's kind of some checklists and things to discuss with you and your spouse when it comes to the things we talked about today. But also there's some real practical business stuff. The three of the things we cover on the business end of things of how to be more efficient, more productive is how do you best utilize your time and your money, and how do you make sure you measure performance. So I'll just give you one quick tidbit on the money part. Is I said earlier is, a lot of people were hiring us for marketing help. They thought sales was the solution.
Yeah.
And it's usually the first thing I look at is margin. They're usually operating on small margins. And statistically, the average business owner is running on a 7.7% net profit margin, which is okay, but it's not good.
No.
In our experience, it's 10 to 15% minimum to allow you the profitability to be able to reinvest properly in the business so you can grow it as a better business. And so the first thing we look at is, number one, price and then efficiency. Mm-hmm. So the thing that most business owners overlook because they're afraid to touch is price.
Yeah.
Their fear of raising prices because they think they're going to lose customers, right?
Yeah. It's never about the price. If you're providing value, people will pay any amount for the right value.
Yeah. So I have this little quick illustration people can think about. Is, let's say you have you're a retail store and you sell jeans, and you buy a pair of jeans for $99 wholesale. You sell it for $100, so a dollar markup, right?
Yeah.
How many pairs of jeans do you need to sell to make $50 in profit? So it'd be 50. Right. So what if you increase the price to $149? Now how many pairs of jeans do you need to sell? It's one.
Yeah.
Now it's a 50% markup, but if I just said 50% markup, people would freak out. Right. But then when you look at it, jeans, you're like, yeah, I can sell one pair of jeans for $149 versus 50 for at 100. Yeah. Right?
It's way easier.
It's easier, right? Exactly. So I don't need 50 customers. I just need one. So that's just a great illustration of margin and how it affects your volume and your workload. And it doesn't really, so you actually be able to make more by selling less. Yep. So that's kind of our strategy when it comes to the money and the money and the time piece, is how do you produce more with less? And so that way you'll be able to scale the business, right? You'll be able to grow the business because you have more margin. And then you have time back and the freedom back to be able to really prioritize your marriage and your family.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I wish you guys all the best. And we'll definitely have to get together soon. And hell, maybe you can.
Our pleasure. It's a pleasure, Shaheen. Thanks for having us on.